Well, welcome back. Every now and then my iPhone will prompt me to download the latest update for my phone. The update's there to remove bugs and also to speed my phone up. And if I choose not to download it, then potentially it can cause my phone to either crash in the future or for my phone to never be able to open up certain apps. And like your phone needs an upgrade, your life also needs to have an upgrade. You've come here because you want to rise to your full potential. And so this is your latest lifestyle upgrade. Today is the last session in this series, Rising to Your Full Potential. Let's recap the 7 steps to rising to your full potential. Session 1, you need a coach. Step 2, remove lids. Step 3, discover yourself. Step 4, discover what sets you apart. Step 5, discover your assignment. Step 6, set your course. And the last step, step 7, remove the brakes and put your foot on the accelerator. Now, warning, today is likely to be a day that I confront a few things. You choose your response. You can either get bitter or you can get better. You can get offended or you can choose to rise to your full potential. So when you get into an elevator, you've got to push buttons to go to new levels. What I want to do today is I want to push your buttons simply because I want you to rise to your full potential. A study was done with hundreds of elderly people, and the question that they asked them, if you got to relive your life, what would you do differently? The study singled out 5 of the top questions, and interestingly, one of them was that they wished they took more risks in their life. Rising to your full potential is worth the risk. Moving towards your assignment, it's worth the risk. The last thing you want in your final years is to look back on your life and regret the fact that you did not take risks in rising to your full potential. So last step, we talked about setting a course from where you are to where you need to be. What's the next step? To remove your foot from the brakes and to put your foot on the accelerator. 5 brakes to remove. Number 1, remove the brake of fear. A future without fear is impossible. We live in a world where fear shows up every day. The Bible actually says, fear not, 365 times. And the reason God is repetitive is simply because He gives you one fear not every day for the rest of your year. Think about it. You'll face fear if you choose to step out, and you'll face fear if you choose to sit back and do nothing. For you to rise to your full potential will require you to face your fears. The fear of failure, the fear of man, the fear of lack, and the fear of the unknown. When fear shows up, you think you're the only one going through it. You think you're the only one dealing with the fear that's showing up. For a lot of people, there's shame in admitting that there's fear inside their life. But I've discovered anyone that's done anything significant on planet Earth are people that have had to deal with fear on a daily basis. Fear wants you to stop in your tracks. Fear wants you to shrink back. Fear wants you to back down. Fear wants you to give up. Fear wants you to throw the towel in. And fear wants to simply paralyze you. Fear simply just acts as a brake to stop you moving towards your future. People that have risen to their full potential are people who daily have made a decision to rise above the fear and push through that stuff. Despite how scary it is, they choose to believe the best. So how do you overcome fear? Number 1, you need to identify what the fear is and confront it. You simply need to speak to it and tell it, you're not going to overcome me. Number 2, share about it with somebody else that you trust. See, that someone else is likely to tell you it's not going to be that bad. Number 3, choose to believe for a better day. Fear and faith take the same energy to believe. Fear causes you to believe for the worst, and faith causes you to believe for the best. Believing in faith is hard sometimes, but it will, I guarantee you, bring greater results. Remove the brake of fear, because life will not wait for those that are living in fear. Number 2, remove the brake of hurt and pain. Every one of us has had to go through pain and hurt from the past. Rejection, betrayal, abuse, injustice. Naturally, we hold on to that pain, the grudges, and typically we rehearse what we went through, tying us to the past. We naturally hold on to those grudges. Sometimes daily we rehearse that hurt that we've been through time after time. I remember reading a story of a lady who decided late one night to walk through Central Park. She knew better, but she was tired. She wanted to get home quickly. So there she was, moving quickly through the middle of Central Park, and unfortunately in the middle of the park, a man that was dressed in black She couldn't really recognize him at the time, but he grabbed a hold of her and he beat her. He then dragged her into the bushes and then he raped her. When he finished doing what he needed to do, he knocked her out, and a number of hours later she came to, and at that moment she realized that she was in so much pain. In fact, she couldn't even walk, and she dragged herself, and she found the closest road. There were cars that were driving past. There she was trying to wave down cars, and to her excitement there was a car that pulled over. But when the driver got out, when she started focusing, she realized it was the same man that raped her the night before. He reached down, grabbed a hold of her hair, and he dragged her back into the bushes, where again he beat and raped her and then knocked her out. A couple more hours later, there was a runner, a jogger that was running through Central Park. It was early morning, and he noticed this body that was in the bushes. He called the authorities. It was at that moment the paramedics turned up and took her off to the hospital. Well, later that night, after many tests were done, the hospital sent the hospital counselor to go and see her. The hospital counselor said, hey, look, with all your wounds and everything you've been through, you're likely to be here for a number of days. That they're going to fix you up on the outside, but they've sent me in to help you get fixed up on the inside. One of the things I'd like to do is to help you come to a point where maybe you can forgive the man that raped you. The lady that was in the bed, she quickly responded. She goes, you don't need to do that because I've already forgiven him. Last night that man raped me twice, but I'm not going to give him the privilege of raping me night after night because I choose to hold on to unforgiveness. As it will be for you. I'm sure you've been wronged. I'm sure you've been betrayed. I'm sure you've got a story to tell. But see, every time you choose to hold on to unforgiveness, it binds you to that person. It rehearses that pain. Don't give them the privilege anymore. Forgive and move on. So how do you get rid of hurt and pain? Number one, be committed to the healing process. Some things take time to heal. Like a broken arm may take 6 weeks to heal, so it will take time to heal some of the wounds of the past pain and hurt that you've been through. Number two, understand that some of the things you've been through may require a professional. It could be a pastor, it could be a counselor, it could be a psychologist. I personally didn't believe in psychologists until I needed one. After the debrief and after doing my time, I noticed the things on the inside that was a mess was getting fixed up. Number three, daily forgive people even when you don't feel like it. It doesn't make what they did right, but it does stop the rehearsal of the pain on the inside. Forgiveness is simply the answer to letting go. Remember, life does not wait for those that are hurting and are in pain. Number three, remove the brake of laziness. See, anyone that you meet that has achieved any level of greatness will tell you that it took a significant amount of work in order for them to get to that place. You ask many teenagers today what they want to be when they grow up, and many of them will say that they want to be famous, that they've got some sort of notion that famous people, they don't have to work, that rich people have things handed to them on a silver platter. Some of them will get incredibly offended by the fact that that's the way you think, because most of them have worked very hard to get to where they are today. Your dream, your potential will require work. So understand, life will not wait for the lazy. Number four, remove the brake of excuses. Now, when things don't go our way, our natural human nature doesn't take responsibility, and we're quick to pass the buck. We're quick to give an excuse. It's my boss's fault, it's the government's fault, it's the economy's fault. We point the finger of blame. But if you notice this, as I'm pointing one finger, there are 3 fingers pointing back at me. Maybe the problem isn't there, maybe the problem is here. All throughout the Bible, there were characters that gave excuses. Jesus actually spoke about excuses in the parable of the great banquet. Let's have a look at this. Luke chapter 14, 16 through 24. Jesus replied with a story. A man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he said to his servants, "Tell the guests, come, the banquet is ready." But they all began to make excuses. One said, "I've just bought a field. I must inspect it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I've just bought 5 pairs of oxen. I want to try them out. Please excuse me." Another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." The servant returned and told his master what they had said. His master was furious, and he says, "Go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town, invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." After the servant had done this, he reported, "There's still room for more." So the master said, "Go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge everyone to come, so that the house may be full. For none of those I first invited will even get the smallest taste of my banquet." 3 excuses: oxen, property, marriage. They just happen to be the 3 top excuses why people do not want to develop their full potential. Why do people not better themselves? Whether it's to read a self-help book, to attend a conference, to go to church, go to a seminar, or listen to a podcast, they'll give the oxen excuse, which simply is the excuse that I'm too busy in my job or my career. It could be the property excuse to say that I've got so much to do around my property, or the marriage excuse that I have to do things with my partner or with my family. Now, I'm not saying leave your job, move out of the house, and move on from your family. But I will say, if you don't stop making excuses, you'll miss out on so much that life has got for you. There'll always be work to do, things to do around the house, and family functions to attend. But you do need to work on developing your potential. Now, note what happens in this parable when the master discovers that they've given excuses. The master gets mad, he invites others, and those that were initially invited misses out. Billy Graham has said a number of times that he was God's third choice. He tells the story that there were two other guys that were more talented and greater orators than he was, but they simply didn't rise to their full potential. Now, I believe it's at those moments God says, "Next!" So remember, life does not wait for those who makes excuses. Number 5, remove the brake of procrastination. This brake has robbed a lot of people because they don't understand the impact of what procrastination does. Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." Well, Pharaoh, he said no. He wasn't interested, so you know the story, plagues show up. One of the plagues was the plague of frogs. Frogs were everywhere. Frogs were in the house, frogs were in your ovens, frogs were in your cooking bowls. And ladies, you'd roll over to kiss your husband and you'd kiss a greasy frog. And unfortunately, it didn't turn into a handsome prince. Pharaoh and the Egyptians summoned Moses, knowing that he was the one with the power to get rid of the frogs. Moses said, "You set the time and I'll pray to have them removed." Pharaoh said, "Tomorrow." He could have said now, but he chose to procrastinate, and he and the Egyptians had to live through it for one more night. One thing you don't have control of is time. There's one thing that every human being on planet Earth gets equally, and that's time. The same 24 hours as the person sitting next to you. The key to you rising to your full potential is what you do with your time. Psalm 90 verse 12 says, "Teach us to number our days so that we may gain the heart of wisdom." Now do the math. Figure out the number of years you've got between now and when you die. You don't know when you're going to die, but let's just say it was 75. You could put 80 years, you could 85 years. Now take away the number of hours that you sleep per day, minus the number of hours you sleep, minus the number of hours you work, minus the number of hours you spend driving, minus the number of hours you spend eating, and minus the number of hours you spend watching TV and playing games. By counting it, you'll actually gain a heart of wisdom. It's then you'll discover how little time you've got left for you to work on your potential. You'll realize that you don't have as much time as you thought. There are times I've waited and I've missed the bus. How many times have we waited and missed the bus? Unfortunately, some buses that only come once, and many have missed opportunities because of procrastination. I'm sure you've heard many people this week that have said to you, "I'm busy." They say it like this is the only time in history that people have been busy. But come on, if we go back to Jesus' day, in those days they didn't have cars, and for them to get to places, it took them 2 or 3 days to walk and journey to get where they needed to get to. They were busy. We're busy. Everyone's busy. Busy is just an excuse. Now you can be busy for a season, but don't let it rob you of your future. Do something to get rid of your busyness. 3 things to help you towards this. Number 1, figure out your priorities. Number 2, put a time limit on idle activities. And number 3, give life balance by giving time to the things that you prioritize. Remember, life does not wait for those who procrastinate. So now, we've removed our foot from the brake. It's now time to put our foot on the accelerator. It's simply time to take action. And the best way to do that is to get passionate about what you love. Here's a few pointers to keep the passion high in your life. Hang with passionate and motivated people. Hang with people who are getting results. Keep your why in front of you. Think of the joy of you reaching your potential. Think of the influence you'll have. Think of the financial difference it'll make for you. Think of the lives that you'll save and rescue. And think about the rewards. The David and Goliath story speaks of this. A 16-year-old boy goes down to the battlefield and he sees a scared army hiding behind rocks and trees when a champion fighter by the name of Goliath steps out and starts tormenting them. David said, "What am I going to get out of it if I take him on?" It was told, "You pay no taxes and you get to marry the king's daughter." That there was enough motivation for him. And he stepped down on that field and he knocked that giant down. He let the reward motivate him to action. I want to congratulate you for going through the 7 steps for you reaching your full potential. Now it's time for you to take action. Let me finish with this story. A little boy had a dream to be in the school basketball team. He'd sit in the stands, he would watch, and he would imagine what it would be like to be there. In fact, it became an obsession. One day when the trials at the beginning of the season came, he got down on the court and he showed the coach some of his skills. Well, it was at that moment, at the end of those trials, the coach came out with his clipboard and he started reading out the names of the students that would be in the basketball team for that season. He was excited. I mean, this was his dream, but unfortunately his name was not called out. He went over to the coach afterwards and he said, "Coach, don't you understand? This is my dream. This is what I always wanted. This is what I live for. Why is my name not on the list?" Well, the coach said at that time, he said, "Look, I can see your passion." But he says, "Unfortunately, we need the best of the best. And at the moment at your age, you just don't quite have the skills that are required for you to be a part of this A team." He said, "Look, let's do a deal." He says, "Look, if you practice with me half an hour before school and then half an hour after school, and you do that for the rest of this year, I guarantee this time next year, you'll be on the team." Well, the little boy got excited, and when all the other friends of his were sleeping in, he was getting up early. He was down on the courts practicing with the coach, and after school, when other students were hanging out at the park or at the mall, he'd be there practicing with them at that time. A year comes around, there he was on the courts, the trial. He shows the skill, and there the coach is reading out the names, and he gets to the very last name, and he calls this kid's name out. Well, this boy, he got his dream. He got to live his dream, playing on the school basketball team. Here's a kid that was rejected, but he did the work that was needed for him to rise to his full potential. In fact, the story doesn't finish there. That boy, many years later, he joined the NBA, became one of the greatest basketball players this planet has ever known. His name is Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was rejected from his school team, but he'd made a decision to work on his potential. He became one of the greatest basketball players this planet has ever known. If he can do it, you can do it. Come on, for the sake of your marriage, for the sake of your kids, for the sake of your future and destiny, it's time for you to rise to your full potential.